Shabbat Shalom. If you don't have one, you might need a siddur. It looks like everybody's got one. They're on the shelf if you need them. Glad that you could join us here. We're glad that you could join us at home. Cantor, we're glad that you're here too. Let's begin. Going up. Welcome in Shabbat with Shalom Aleichem, page 142. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Baruchuni leShalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seitchem leShalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
My colleague, Rabbi David Wolpe, in Los Angeles, who was a teacher and a friend of mine when I was in undergrad. I think I was one of his first students. I got a B in his class. Told a story on Facebook just the other day about a funeral that he had done for a congregant, and maybe you saw it. It was such a touching story. I just want to retell it. He talked about a longtime congregant of his who was elderly, and that every Shabbat their ritual was that this gentleman would come and place the microphone for his hearing aids on the bimah, so that he could hear the rabbi's sermon more clearly in his ear. And that was their ritual, and they did that Shabbat after Shabbat for year after year. And he died this past week, Olav Shalom, and Rabbi Wolpe was doing the Shiva Minyan and told this story and how he missed that ritual, that Shabbat, that he would miss that taking of the microphone and placing it there. And after having done the Shiva, the daughter of the deceased came up to him and said, you know, you should have this, and handed Rabbi Wolpe the microphone that was connected to her late father's hearing aids. And then she said to him, you know, we buried him with his hearing aids, so you can still talk to him and he can still listen. And it's just such a lovely story, and it was shared by hundreds of people around the world. And I thought about it in the context of why we come to synagogue and what we are here to do. We think of it, we're here to pray, we're here to emote, to express. But so often in so many things, and particularly in this place, we're We're here to listen. And if we listen, we have to also hear. So what do we hear? What are we listening for? What are we hearing? What do you hear tonight in the prayers that we sing, in the words that are in the siddur that maybe you read to yourself? What will you hear tonight and this Shabbos that will be transformative, that will stay with you, that might spark a conversation with God or with yourself or both? We listen and we hear. We'll continue with the lighting of the Shabbos candles and a reading that I will come down here and do. These Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them. So may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel that have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. So we'll continue with Kabbalat Shabbat, Psalm 95, where we say, Lechu neranena, let us go and sing to Adonai. So we come, where are we going? We're coming to the synagogue, some say, in person or virtually, to sing together as a community. And these words also evoke the first stanza of Lecha Dodi that we'll get to later, that the peak of Kabbalat Shabbat, where we say, Lechu v'nelcha, let us go out to God. And when we get to the second line of Psalm 95, or the third line, we say, Nekadma fanav, we come before God, or literally before God's face. Panav, which again connects to Lecha Dodi. Penei Shabbat nekabbalah is what we say in Lecha Dodi. The face we're facing and welcoming Shabbat. So there's this connection between the beginning and the peak of Kabbalat Shabbat. And you can think of it as an arc. We're building up to Lecha Dodi, starting with these warm-up psalms that encourage us to go out into the world, whether that's to the synagogue or somewhere where you feel that sense of spirituality or greater connection, encountering the divine. And that's our prayer as we begin Shabbat. Page 130, Lechu neranena. Lechu neranena l'Adonai, nariya letzur yishenu. Lechu neranena l'Adonai, nariya letzur yishenu. Nekadma fanav betoda, biznirot nariya lo. Nekadma fanav betoda, biznirot nariya lo. Ya lai 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 lai, ya lai 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 lai, ya lai 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 lai, ya lai 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 lai, ya lai 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 lai, ya lai 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 lai, ya lai 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 lai, ya lai lai lai, ya lai 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 lai, ya lai 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 lai, ya lai 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 lai, ya lai 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 lai, ya lai 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 lai, ya lai 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 lai, ya lai 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 lai, ya lai 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 lai. On the next page, Shiru l'Adonai, מזמור שירו לאדוני, שיר חדש, כי נפלאות עשה, הושיע לו ימין וזרוע, קודשו הודיע אדוני ישועתו, בעיני הגויים גילה צדקתו, זכר חסדו ואמונתו, לבית ישראל ראו כל ארצי הארץ את ישועת אלוהינו, הריעו לאדוני כל הארץ, ניצחו ורננו וזמר, יללי, יללי, At the top of 134, we sing Zamru l'Adonai Bechinor. We sing to Adonai with the lyre and song, trumpets, and the blast of the horn. Zameru l'Adonai Bechinor, Bechinor b'kol zimra. Zameru l'Adonai Bechinor, Bechinor b'kol zimra. Zameru, zamru, l'Adonai. Zameru, zamru, l'Adonai. Zameru l'Adonai bechinor, bechinor v'kol zimra. Let me hear you. Zameru l'Adonai bechinor, bechinor v'kol zimra. Zameru, zamru, l'Adonai. Zameru, zamru, l'Adonai. One more time. Zameru l'Adonai bechinor, bechinor v'kol zimra. Zameru l'Adonai bechinor, bechinor v'kol zimra. So we've arrived at that peak of Kabbalat Shabbat. I hope you feel warmed up, ready to sing together. L'chadodi, page 138. This is a new melody, so you'll catch on. Well, we haven't done it in a while. L'chadodi likrat kala, la 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 la. B'nei Shabbat nekabela, ya la 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 la. L'chadodi likrat kala, la 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 la. B'nei Shabbat nekabela. שמור וזכור בדיבור אחד, השמיענו אל המבחן, אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, השם הוא תפארת וליתי לה לה לה, וחדותי לקראת קלה, לה 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 לה, בני שבת נקבלה, יא לה 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 לה, וחדותי לקראת קלה, la 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 la. B'nei Shabbat nekabela, ya la 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 la. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki mekor hameracha, merosh mikeden nesucha, sof ma'aseh v'machshavati la la la, v'chadodi likrat kala, la 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 la. B'nei Shabbat nekabela, וחדותי לקראת קלה, לה 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 לה. אני שבת נקבלה. יה לה 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 לה. Verse 3. מקדש מלך עיר מלוכה, קומי תהי מתוך אביך, רב לך שבט בעמק הבכה, והוא יחמול עלייכם לה לה לה, וחדותי לקראת קלה, לה 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 לה. אני שבת נקבלה. לה 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 לה. Let's go to verse 5. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי, אורי, אורי שתדברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך בגלל לה לה, וחדותי לקראת קלה, לה 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 לה. ואני שבת נקבלה. יה לה 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 לה. We'll rise and face the back for the final verse 9. Welcoming in Shabbat. בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצולה, תוך אמוני ים סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה, וחדותי לקראת קלה, לה 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 לה. ואני שבת נקבלה, לה 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 לה, וחדותי לקראת קלה, לה 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 לה. ואני שבת נקבלה, לה 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 לה.
We'll remain standing, page 263, as we continue with Chatzi Kaddish.
יתגדל ויתקדש שם רבה,
אמן.
ועלמד יברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון, וחיי כל בית ישראל, בעגלה, בעגלה, ובזמן קריב אמרו, אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ולעלמי יתברך. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי דקודשא בריחו לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמא ואמרו amen.
Remain standing. The Baruch Hu's on page 264.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
Baruch Adonai Hamborach Leolam Vaed.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
Can be seated. Page 265, the top of the page, Ma'ariv Aravim, a prayer for evening. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidbaro Ma'ariv Aravim, b'chokhma poteach she'arim, uvitvuna meshane itim, umachalif et hazmanim, umesader et hakochavim, b'mishrotehem barakia kirtzono. Borei yom v'layla golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or, umavir yom umevi layla, umavdil bein yom uvein layla, Adonai tzavaot shemo. El chai v'kayam, tamid yimloch aleinu le'olam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, ham'ariv aravim.
אהבת עולם בית ישראל, עמך אהבת. תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו לימדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו, בשוכבנו ובקומנו, נשיח בחוקך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך, ובמצוותיך, לעולם לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו לאורך ימינו, ובהם נגה יומם ולילה ואהבתך. אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים, ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך, ושוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
As we come to the Michamocha, just before it is a prayer, Emet ve'emunah, truth and faith, it reads. Part of the English of that prayer reads as follows. Well, a rendering of it. We worship the power that unites the universe, a promise of harmony for all. Yet that oneness eludes our grasp as imperfection and evil abound. Before our eyes there is a vision of perfection, order, and goodness. There is evil enough to break the heart, there is good enough to exalt the soul. And then the question is posed, when will redemption come? The prayer offers its own answer. It says that when we grant to everyone what we would want for ourselves. And that is, I think, one form of redemption. I think also, though, not just to grant, but to secure for everyone those things that we want for ourselves. That part of redemption is to go out and to do it, not just to wait for peace to happen. We pray for peace a lot. We pray for justice and for security. And we need to remember that we have to take an active part in doing that as well. Prayer may at sometimes feel passive, but Judaism is not a passive way of life. It is an active way of life. In fact, it is about doing more than it is believing or even praying. And so how will we be a redemptive force in our world, in our family, in our community, in our own lives? How can we help lift ourselves out of the narrow places onto freedom's shore? And so we sing of freedom and redemption, page 270, Michamocha.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש. נורא תהילות אוסף אלה, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה. מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקע הים לפני משה ומרים, זה לינו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך, אדוני ימלוך, לעולם ועד. ונאמר כי ודע אדוני את יעקב, וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל ישראל. We'll continue on the third line of Hashkivenu on the next page. Ufros aleinu. Ufros aleinu. Sukkot. Sukkot. Shelomecha. Ufros aleinu. Sukkot. Sukkot. Shelomecha. The last two lines. Baruch atah Adonai, hapores sukkot shalom, aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim.
Page 272. We celebrate Shabbat with the commandment of Shabbat, V'shamru.
V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורות המרית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, ביני ובין בני ישראל, ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם. Yam badai dai dai, Shabbat, Shabbat, Yam badai dai dai, Shabbat, Shabbat, Yam badai dai dai, Shabbat, 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 Shalom. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש. Yam badai dai dai, Shabbat, Shabbat, Yam badai dai dai, Shabbat, Shabbat, Yam badai dai dai, Shabbat, 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 Shalom.
We'll rise. Adonai Sefetai Tiftachu Fi Yagid Hilatecha. Eternal God, help us find the words as we speak with you in prayer. The Amidah, page 274.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu ve'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor ve'Hanora, Elion Gomel Chasadim Tovim Bekoneh Hakol, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיה מתים אתה רב להושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיה מתים ברחמים רבים, צומח נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישוע ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
Amen. You are holy, your name is holy, and those who are holy praise you every day. Blessed are you, Adonai, the holy God. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh.
Amen.
You can be seated. We'll continue, page 277, the bottom Hebrew paragraph, Kadshenu.
Kadeshenu במצוותיך ותן חלקנו, בתורתך חדשנו, במצוותיך ותן חלקנו, בתורתך סבנו, מטובך ושמחנו, בישועתך סבנו, מטובך ושמחנו, בישועתך
Top of page 279.
רצה אדוני אלוהינו בעמך ישראל ותפילתם באהבה תקבל ותהי לרצון תמיד עבודת ישראל ישראל עמך אל קרוב לכל קרב פני אל עבדיך וחוננו שפוך רוחך עלינו ותחזינה עינינו ושובך לציון ברחמים ברוך אתה אדוני המחזיר שכינתו לציון, לציון, לציון.
I'm smiling because we have been trying to get that slide for it to say right, and we didn't. We're still missing a word on the end, aren't we? Letzion. It's like I fix one part of it and I screw up another part of it. We will get it eventually. But the cantor got it right. That's the important thing. Okay, well, I'll figure that out later. We continue page 281 after we take a moment privately for our own prayers of hoda'ah, of gratitude and thanksgiving as we thank God for the blessings in our life.
ועל כולם, ועל כולם, יתברך ויתרומם, יתברך ויתרומם, שמך מלכנו תמיד לעולם ועד, בכל החיים יודוך הסלע ויהללו את שמך באמת, האל ישועתנו ועזרתנו, עזרתנו סלע. ועל כולם, ועל כולם, יתברך ויתרומם, יתברך ויתרומם, שמך מלכנו תמיד לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, הטוב שמך, הטוב שמך, ולך נאה, נאה להודות.
Page 282, a prayer for peace.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki ata melech Adon lechol hashalom. Ki ata melech Adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov beinecha levarech et amcha Yisrael bechol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam.
A moment for Tefillat Shebelev, the private and silent prayers of our heart.
יהיו לרצון אמרי פי והגיון ליבי לפניך. אדוני צורי, אדוני וגואלי, וגואלי.
We turn our prayer books to page 371 as our thoughts and attention turn to those where they really almost always are, to those who are sick and in need of healing in our community. We are ever aware of the power of prayer and particularly power of the prayer in community. As the reading goes, perhaps it won't heal a broken bone, but it can mend a broken soul. Prayer can lift us up, give us strength and courage to endure so that we might take the time and that science and medicine and doctors and nurses and caregivers can find the therapies and the cures to make us whole again. And prayer in that process can help us find holiness. We ask God's blessing of healing on Bobby Levine, Richard Schwartzstein, Harry Goldstein, Lynn Curson, David Whiteley, Rose Godfrey, Eric Schneider, Elisheva Tehila Bat Yam Bat Avraham Vasara, Doris Medved, Janet Gelb, Alicia Eckersley, Jean Angus, Bob Fanning, Mel Karp, Avram Sudak, Merrill Granberg,
Yehudit bat Avraham Basara, Dina Mandel, Ralph Schulman, Basil Kalner, Howard Diamond, Isabel, Judy Steiner-Lossberg, Alana James, Dr. Dmitry Zanozin, Shana Stawicki, Sanford Cohen, Sarah bat Avraham Basara, David Shlomo Gorney, Andrea Jarzabak. If there are others in need of this prayer of healing, if you could call out their names here in our congregation. And those at home, we invite you to call out and give voice to the names of those within your circle that are in need of healing as well, as we join together, page 371, Amisha Berach, a prayer for healing.
Mishe berach avoteinu mekor habracha leimoteinu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishe berach imoteinu mekor habracha lavoteinu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Just as we ask a prayer of healing, we are forever conscious of those who bring healing. And we ask at this time for this blessing upon those who are our caregivers, a prayer for healers. May the one who blessed our ancestors bless all of those who put themselves at risk to care for the sick, physicians and nurses and orderlies, technicians and home health aides, emergency responders and pharmacists, hospital social workers and respiratory therapists, those who care for our elders, all who navigate the unfolding dangers of the world each day to tend to those they have sworn to help. Bless them in their coming home and bless them in their going out. Ease their fear, sustain them. Source of all breath and healer of all beings, protect them and restore their hope. Strengthen them that may bring strength. Keep them in health that they may bring healing. And help them know again a time when they can breathe without fear. Bless the sacred work of their hands. May this plague pass from among us speedily and in our days. And we say together, Amen. A few announcements this evening. First of all, thank you all that came in person. We are open for services, and as you feel more comfortable going out, and hopefully as caseloads begin to, God willing, decline, and hospitalizations hopefully as well, if you feel comfortable coming back to the synagogue, we welcome you. The room holds 900. There's about 12 here, so you can spread out and sit wherever you want. You're welcome here. Following our service tonight and tomorrow, there'll be a virtual Kiddush and Oneg via Zoom. So those that are here, if you'll join us in Sarah's tent if you'd like to. We've got our hybrid classroom set up, and those online, there'll be a link, as you know, that shows up on screen. You can join us on Zoom, and we can have a little chat for a few minutes. Tomorrow morning, there's Torah study at 8:30 via Zoom. Services begin tomorrow at 10 a.m. Tomorrow night at 7:30, there's Havdalah, which is also via Zoom, and we hope you'll join us from your homes. Coming up on Sunday is a wonderful program that we're doing in collaboration with Temple Sinai in Toronto. A conversation with author Lisa Skodeline at 10 a.m. via Zoom. She's the #1 best-selling and award-winning author of 33 novels. Named for the eternal city of Rome, her new novel, Eternal, is a saga of loyalty and loss, family and food, love and hate, all set in the world's most beautiful cities at its darkest moment. You can sign up via our website. Jeff Balin, past president of our congregation, will be teaching his class, his monthly course, Torah-Inspired Leadership, on Wednesday, February 2nd at 7 p.m. That's also via Zoom. And the session that is coming up is based on the weekly Parsha for that week, Truma, on the theme of the theme will be the home we build together. The course is free. Anyone is welcome. You don't have to have attended previous courses to attend this. Our six-part history of Zionism and Israel continues with Mike Hollander, our Jewish educator who is in Israel. I saw they had a class just the other day, and it looked like people are enjoying it. So I hope that those who have participated will continue to, and if you would like to join, you can join anyway through. The series is From Exile to Startup Nation. And our men's club on Thursday, February 10th, has a course on Israel as well with Professor Greg Gardner, the husband of our own Rabbi Carrie Brown, Excavating Israel and Digging Up Jewish Identity with Professor Gardner. That's at 7 p.m., also via Zoom. And then you should have received an email today from the congregation about our fundraiser, our annual fundraiser is coming up, an event called Journeys with world-renowned cellist Amit Peled, who's coming in from Israel to be here with us. He'll be here in the sanctuary. If protocols change and they allow us to do in-person events like that, then we will open it up for those that would like to attend in person, but it will absolutely be broadcast live and streamed with all of our cameras and all of our technology. We're also that evening honoring two wonderful doctors in our community, Dr. Patty Daly and Dr. Eric Grafstein. They are a Jewish power couple. Dr. Daly is in charge of public health for Vancouver Coastal Health, and Dr. Grafstein is the former director of the emergency department at St. Paul's Hospital. Boy, are their parents proud. Two doctors in the family. They have been incredibly helpful to not only our congregation, but our entire community, Jewish and beyond, throughout this pandemic, as they have borne the brunt of so much of this burden. And so it's a pleasure for us to not only honor them, but as part of the event and the fundraising that we're doing, we're going to be purchasing a particular medical device that's needed in the ER that will allow them to do their work better and more safely on the front lines. So I hope that you'll participate in that by attending and even doing some tzedakah if you're able to. Any announcements that I missed? Okay. We had a wonderful challah pickup earlier today for our seniors, and we'll do that again, hopefully soon. So I hope that you'll bear with me, because I'm going to talk about baseball for a few minutes in tonight's sermon. Now, those that were here prior to my arrival, for 33 years with Rabbi Bregman, I'm told every sermon, or at least every other sermon, was about baseball. So I only do it once or twice a year. I think you're ahead of the game. I promise I will get to Torah and to Talmud, but it might take an inning or two to get there. So this past week, the Baseball Writers Association, let me fix my tallit first. The Baseball Writers Association, the body that votes on candidates for the Baseball Hall of Fame, chose for the 10th time, and really it's his probably final time in normal eligibility, not to elect Barry Bonds into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Now, if you follow baseball at all, you probably already know that. In fact, if you follow baseball at all, you probably have an opinion on that. In fact, you might have conflicting opinions on that. And if your social media is anything like mine, you've posted that opinion and heard everybody else's. If this is the first time that you are hearing of all of it, and are really considering getting up right now and leaving because the rabbi's talking about baseball on Shabbos, or changing the channel, or going into the kitchen, I don't know what people do when they watch services at home because I'm always here. Please, again, just bear with me. A few more pitches and we will get to the broader teaching. So Barry Bonds, the all-time leader in home runs, 762, surpassing Hank Aaron, and the most home runs in a single season, 73, surpassing not Babe Ruth, but Roger Maris, who actually was surpassed prior to that by Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire. People don't always know that. Did that later. As well as a little-known stat about Barry Bonds, the most intentional walks of a single player in the history of baseball. They did not want to. There was one time the bases were loaded and they intentionally walked Barry Bonds. Worked out okay. The team was leading by 2. They gave up 1 run on the walk, and then they got the next person out. Anyhow, again, I will get to Torah and Talmud, I promise. But all of those stats make him, if not one, perhaps the greatest of baseball players of all time, or certainly of his era, the late 90s, early 2000s. Now, I have a bit of a special connection with Barry Bonds. He doesn't know that, but I feel it. Beyond being a native San Franciscan and thus growing up as a San Francisco Giants fan, the team that Bonds set most of these records with at the height of his career, I also went to school with him. Well, not really with him. I went to school next to him. You see, my elementary school was next door to his high school, and he graduated from my elementary school the year before I came to my elementary school. And that's about as close as we got. But our playground fence shared the fence of their baseball field. And so I remember as a 6, 7, 8-year-old playing on the playground and hearing balls getting whacked around this ball field and wondering who was hitting those balls, and people telling me, oh, that's Barry Bonds, Bobby Bonds, his son. Bobby Bonds, another successful baseball player. I know I'm losing some of you already. But anyhow, that's how close Barry and I are. He doesn't, again, have any idea who I am. All of that is to say that I am a fan, though I've never met him. I have a bond with Bonds. But Barry is known for something else as well. His career records and achievements appear to be directly connected to his use of performance-enhancing drugs, or PEDs, that were prolific in the late 90s and the early 2000s when he was setting all those records. Now, Bonds has never admitted to using them, but the evidence is truly incontrovertible, scientifically certain, and corroborated by surrounding facts and circumstances. He was not the only one. In fact, a U.S. government-led investigation found 85 active players were or were likely using PEDs during that period. And so the question, and now really to the Torah and the Talmud, and the broader applications of this case study, is the following. Is cheating of any kind always a sin? And is unrepentant cheating unforgivable? The Torah teaches that one should always be honest in one's dealings and not seek to deceive others. The rabbis of the Talmud and beyond state that our yes should mean yes and our no should mean no. The rabbis of that same Talmud tell us that dishonesty extends even to messing around with a person to get them to think that something is true when it's not, even if it's a joke. In fact, the term for this is called genivat da'at. In English, it would be deception, or more literally, stealing of somebody's understanding, stealing their mind. And this is derived from Jacob's deception of Laban and Absalom's of his father David. The origin of this term is attributed to the Talmudic sage Samuel, who lived in Nehedrea and who states in the Talmud, "It is forbidden to mislead people, even a non-Jew." Now, Reb Zvi Solomons of the Jewish community of the Berkshires, whose 2016 essay is going to inform a lot of what I'm about to tell you, because I leaned on it heavily, he taught that Talmudic even is quite notable. Deception of anyone is prohibited. Indeed, in business situations, the rabbis give examples of how straightforward we must be, to the extent that if we buy an item and discover another more valuable item to be concealed within the one we bought, we must return the more valuable item to the rightful owner. There's a famous story in the Talmud about a man who buys a donkey and discovers there's a jewel tied around the donkey's neck, and his students say, "You can keep it. The guy you bought it from is not Jewish, and he doesn't know that you have a jewel. He thinks he sold you a donkey." And the rabbi responds to his students, "No, we must return it, because far be it for them to say that we stole it, that I took advantage in some way." Among ourselves, we are only allowed to make a profit of 1/6 over the cost of an item. And of course, cheating in exams falls under this prohibition as well, because you are lying about your own qualifications. But what about something as relatively insignificant as sports? And in particular, spectator sports, which, while a business for sure, exists purely for entertainment. Can you lie when the moral stakes appear to be so low? The implications of cheating in sport are not so low. In fact, they're very serious, because sport serves as a projection on the world as we would like to see it, and the rules that we'd like to operate by. Now, first part of it is the drugs that one takes to enhance one's performance. Those are serious They can alter the results not only of an event, but of your biology. And Judaism says that we must guard our bodies. So on one level, one cannot take performance-enhancing drugs because it could do harm to your body, but that's not quite where we want to go. It actually has a bearing on the whole business of sport and on the practice of betting on the results. So from one view, cheating actually falls under the category of cheating in business. Cheating in sport actually falls under the category of cheating in business, which by some readings is considered to be actually the greatest ethical sin in the whole of Torah and Judaism. In fact, according to Jewish tradition, when you die and you go before the gates of heaven for that divine judgment, God is going to ask you a question. And God's not going to ask you, did you come to synagogue? And God's not going to ask you, did you keep kosher? God's not even going to ask, did you give tzedakah? God's going to ask, were you honest in business? Why that question above all the others? Because when you had an opportunity to take advantage of somebody else for your own profit and gain, in the likely event that you would actually be discovered, did you have integrity? Did you say no? Did you not lie and steal somebody's understanding? Did you have moral integrity? Now, the greatest damage, though, of Bonds and his fellow and performance-enhancing drug-using athletes in baseball and in all sports, let's not forget Lance Armstrong in cycling, is perhaps the damage that it did to athletics and to sport in general. A worthy consideration as we find ourselves a week away from the Olympic opening ceremonies. And we all know how performance-enhancing sport drugs have informed those Olympic sports and events. And so back to a point I was trying to make earlier, the role that sport has played in not only entertaining, but in trying to elevate society is significant. Our ability to project the values of hard work, of perseverance, of courage, of fortitude, of mastery over the human body and its God-given potential onto the playing field, while we struggle at times to find and express those same values in this space, in the real world, in our day-to-day lives, has made sport at times a model of the ideal and aspiration of how we hope the world would be, or could be, if we all tried as hard as those athletes, if we all worked together as much as those teams, if we all faced adversity with such resilience and fortitude and resolve, as some athletes do when they struggle to get over the finish line, when they grind it out day after day. But alas, the suspicions raised against all athletes during that performance-enhancing drug era, which has now extended, as I said, to the Olympics and to amateur sports, and most painfully, into youth sports as well. Those are all reasons why this dishonesty is utterly prohibited in the view of Jewish law and values. So on a micro level, by Jewish moral standards, Barry Bonds does not deserve to be in the Baseball Hall of Fame. And the fact that others who are already in that illustrious hall may have also cheated in their own way, in their own time and era, is no excuse for turning a blind eye to his behavior. And on the macro level, the greatest lesson of Bonds and the sin of genivat da'at, the sin of stealing another's understanding, is that it is a bright red line that in the view of Jewish law and tradition, we must never cross. We actually should stay far away from it so as not to even be associated with even the perception that we have intentionally deceived another for our own fame, gain, and fortune. Now, maybe a sermon about baseball is indeed irrelevant to many of us, but a reminder of that fundamental Jewish value of genivat da'at and the greatness of that sin of not stealing somebody's mind, of not stealing their understanding of what is real and what is certain and what they know, that is relevant. And a necessary reminder is necessary every day. Shabbat Sholom. Our service continues with Aleinu, page 586.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובה מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבות אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת, אין עוד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
Please be seated. So yesterday was International Holocaust Remembrance Day. And the cantor and I want to take a moment now before Kaddish Yatom, before the Mourners' Kaddish, to acknowledge that day and to join with the whole world in remembering. I mentioned before the service on our Shabbat at the Rabbi's table that International Holocaust Remembrance Day is on one level a complicated day, because it's not the day that the Jewish community chose to remember the Holocaust, to remember the Shoah. That day is Yom HaShoah, which is full title is Yom HaShoah HaGevurah, the day of catastrophe, of calamity, the Shoah, and of resistance. The date that the Jewish people chose was the day of the uprising at the Warsaw Ghetto. The day that the United Nations chose for International Holocaust Remembrance Day is the day that Auschwitz was liberated, the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau. So on one level, you have that dichotomy of resistance and rising up. That is the Jewish way to prefer to remember that moment as a charge for the resettling of the land of Israel, for the reestablishing of Jewish community around the world. And then you have that the international community that sees it, as a day of sorrow and of mourning, which of course it is. Some of my friends and colleagues choose not to observe International Holocaust Remembrance Day, thinking that it's not the day for us, it's the day for everyone else. I actually think that it's just fine that it's there. In fact, I'm glad there are two. It's us to educate the world about Yom HaShoah, that others might join us on those days, and certainly they do. Many politicians issue statements or appear at services on those days. And it is wonderful, and wonderful is probably not the right word, it is fitting and appropriate and necessary that the world stop and recognize the unimaginable horror and trauma of the Holocaust of the Shoah, and just as our city did, to make public statements and public memorials to draw attention to it. So I am glad that we have both days, and I am glad to live in a country where we can acknowledge them both and acknowledge them with appropriate solemnity. And so, before we recite Kaddish together, the cantor has a song.
So we're going to move into Kaddish through Eli, Eli. It's on page 653, if you're following along at the bottom. This is a poem that was written by Hannah Senesh, who was a Hungarian Jew born in 1921. She immigrated to Palestine to become part of the Zionist movement in 1939, went to school there, studied to become a paratrooper, and then actually was recruited and decided to return to Europe in 1944 to help fight the Nazis. Soon after, she was captured and killed, tortured before she was killed, months before the end of the war. And we have this beautiful poem, these words that she wrote that embody her strong spirit, her love of life, and this hope that we have as a Jewish people, that we will one day have peace. Eli, Eli, shelo yigamer leolam, hachol ve'hayam, rishru shel hamayim, ve'rak hashamayim, tfilat ha'adam, hachol ve'hayam, rishru shel hamayim, ve'rak hashamayim, tfilat ha'adam. Oh God, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart, the sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart.
As we turn our thoughts to loved ones who are not here, but whose memory is, a memory that continues to guide us and inspire us as we recall them for blessing. We read the names now of those who died during this past week or these past 30 days, whose families are in the midst of Shiva and Shloshim. I read the name of your loved one if you could rise and remain standing here or at home. Rayanne Brackett, Ronald Fratkin, Igor Ilyasov, Saul Cohn, Ronald Lyon Landsberg, Joyce Elaine Rosenthal, Ben Verstig. And those for whom the Yortzeit, the anniversary of the death of your loved one, was on this Shabbat, if you too could rise and remain standing as I read their name. Byron Aceman, Beryl Atnikov, Len Babbins, Abe Bell, Rose Brown, Harvey Cohen, Ted Cohn. Esther Dason, Jean Fiedler, Charles Gold, Horace Gold, Leslie Earl Harowitz, Sella Heller, Julius Herman, Nadia Kaplan, Eric Katz, Rita Krivel, Blanca Kuhnberg, David Lagnado, Ann Lampert, Frank Agnestoff, Rose Peckett, Ruth Posen, Leo Harvey Ratner, Alex Reback, Rosa Rostas, Paul Shore, Leonard Shore, Abe Silverman, Malka Smith, Meyer Somech, Marcel Somech, Caroline Spector, George Abraham Steiner, Faye Tubinshalak, Fred Walker, Charles Wexler, Annette White, Jerry Yates, Lillian Ziff. If there are others who've come to say Kaddish, if you could rise and share the names of your loved ones as well.
We invite all those who wish to rise now at this time to join those who are saying Kaddish. As we turn to page 598 for Kaddish Tome, we recall all of those who've died in defense of freedom and justice, victims of terror in this land, the land of Israel, around the world. And those who died in the Shoah and the Holocaust, who have no family left to remember them, we recall them for blessing as well. Page 598. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, v'yalma divrach irutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayachon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, v'agalav izman kariv v'yimaru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'lamei olmaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitruman v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudisha b'rechu, le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, daminron be'oma v'yimaru amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimaru amen. Osei shalom imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, al kol yoshvei tevel, v'yimaru amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort the bereaved among us, and we say together, amen. The cantor is going to make her way down to the lower podium to lead us in Kiddush. And Motzi, I think the card is on the bottom there. Got it? Okay, good.
Va'erev va'voker yom hashishi, va'yecholu hashamayim v'haaretz v'chotzevam, va'yechal Elohim b'yom hashvi'i melachto asher asa, va'yishpot b'yom hashvi'i mikol melachto asher asa, va'yevarech Elohim et yom hashvi'i, va'yikadesh oto ki bo shavat mikol melachto asher bara Elohim lasot. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu, zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit, ki hu yom techila lemikra'ei kodesh, zecher letziat Mitzrayim, kivanu b'charta, ve'otanu kidashta, mikol hamim, b'shabbat kodshecha, be'ahava uvratzon, hinchaltanu, baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh haShabbat.
Amen. L'chaim, to life.
Yeah. We'll join in Hamotzi for the bread. Try not to knock anything over. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Amen. We're going to join together in our closing song as soon as the cantor finishes chewing.
Exactly. That's the problem with doing everything. Okay. Oseh shalom b'romav, uyaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, imru, amen. Oseh shalom b'romav, uyaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Breathing is hard. Ve'imru, imru, amen. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael.
Join us, please, in Sarah's tent for our virtual oneg, if you would like, or tomorrow, or online, or whatever. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.